Hello everyone, Andy here, still not doing the Trencher Bootcamp cosplay I really want to, but still teaching you how to play the game nevertheless. Once that Trencher army releases though, oh boy, every video will be Trencher themed, it's going to get excessive. This video is mostly going to be discussing Warjacks and Warcasters, as these are the biggest, most exciting units that dominate the battlefield and also have the most ways to put them to use, from spells to headbutts to slams and throws, alongside focus and fury management. We're also going to discuss a few nuances of engagement range, spells, special attacks versus special actions, cohorts, battle groups. Basically, this video is a bunch of common questions being answered, sort of. You can play the game without ever knowing any of this, to be honest, but at some point you might ask yourself, if I have a unit and one gets the kill but the others don't, and now he's out of engagement range but I want to move him in, but not any of the others, can I do that? Maybe. If his move is over 3 inches, does he count as charging? Does the whole unit count as charging? You know how it is, right? Niche rules that will come up regularly, despite not being core rules and interactions per se. If you check the timestamps, you'll see there aren't that many sections actually. That's because up first I'm giving you a bit of a practical example, but it's going to cover 5 different rules in one. Then Warjacks as a big block of WTF is this, then a few scatterings of import, right? However, this should hopefully actually be a slightly more engaging video as basic training, as we don't have to cover how to read a data card, which is inherently super dry. This is an information dense video filled with gems, no doubt, but good luck. Let's start with war machines. All Warjacks have a whole load of symbols next to their name, and that feels like a few too many symbols to be worth remembering what they are. First things first, I'm going to complain about it again. Looking at the data card in the app, yes, you can hit the question mark at the question mark, I know. That's a lot of symbols and far too many clicks, if you don't know the question marks are there, to find out what they mean. To help you out, free to all, links in the description, I have created data cards to the Ghost of Ios Cardra, where I have an innovative design called the back of a card. Turn this card over and look at that! All of the symbols are explained. You're welcome. There are a lot of symbols and abilities and they're all different, but I do want to show you how moving an enemy model works because it's very core to the game, okay? And let's apply it to a practical situation. So this is a bit of a demo activation order that you might actually see in game, and after seeing it all happen, we kind of go back and discuss the specifics. Signar versus House Dusk, okay? The Dusk Warcaster is hidden behind a Warjack and a sweet AF looking cavalry model. Signar want to let their character Warjack, the general, get to the Warcaster to go for that assassination, but right now the general is blocked. Tempest Assailers charge and use their heavy voltaic hammers special attack action Smite. They have a 2-inch range and stay as far away as possible because they're trying to open up a corridor, right? This attack hits and the enemy model will be pushed back D6 inches. It's a special attack, which means it is the only attack the model can make. They forfeit their second attack, the Shield Bash. Our first assailer is Mat 7 into the Warjack, who is Def 12, which means on 2d6 we need a 5+, which we get. Smite is an attack with a special effect called Slammed, and so we need to move the model. We follow the rule and roll a 6 to see how far we move the enemy, but as this Warjack is on a base larger than the attacking model, it only moves half the distance, so 3 inches. It doesn't collide with anything during the push, which must be directly away from the attacking model. Now that we know the slam move didn't hit anything, we can roll for damage. We charged, so we get a boost die. We are POW 14 into ARM 19, so we are dice off 5. Note the different coloured dice is telling us which column we are dealing damage to. So, we are dealing 8 damage to the 3. Nice. After a model is slammed, they get knocked down. The next assailer is now hitting a model with the same base size as it. Mat 7 into Def 13. We need 6, which we get. We roll for the slam move and get another 6. How lucky. This time, the model will move the full 6 inches, and due to the angle it's being moved, its base will collide with the warjack before it finishes its move. That means it stops where it collides, and we roll damage. We get the boost die for charging, and we get an additional die for the slam attack collision, as it collided with a model of the same size or larger or solid terrain. POW 14 into arm 17 with dice off 3, and we deal over 8 damage killing the Dreadguard cavalry. The warjack is a larger base than the model pushed into it, and so does not suffer a collateral damage hit. Now look at this wide open, gaping chasm between the general and the enemy warcaster Helith. Decompress, that was a lot there. The basics of moving and attacking are covered, obviously we all know what's going on there, but the Tempest Assailants performed a special attack. There are special attacks and special actions which will be marked with a star on various datasheets. A special attack can be done in place of your regular attacks if you want. Very often, by reading the special attack or special action on a unit's card, you can figure out how the unit was designed to be used. Let's cover what exactly a special attack and action is. After making your movement action, you have a choice of combat action. That can be your initial attack with each melee weapon, with each ranged weapon up to the rate of fire allowed, a special attack, a special action, or a power attack. You cannot make your move action, a ranged attack, and then peruse your special actions. Remember that Warmachine is at its core an action-based system. One movement action, then one combat action. And the special attack and action are used to show your attack can have a gameplay effect instead of just damage, pretty much. That's the way to think of it. That's a good rule of thumb. A thumb with big holes and exceptions, but a thumb nonetheless. If a rule on your data card doesn't have that star next to it, then it's something you can do passively without making a choice. And how to do it will be noted in the rule. Whereas the special attacks and actions are a choice to be made before you do it. Which brings us to spells. The main source of holes in that thumb, as just mentioned. Casting a spell is special. It's an additional action that can be done in your activation. You can move, combat, and then spell. Or spell, move, combat. Or move, spell, combat. Think of it as a bonus action that can be done at any point, with the only exception being that it can't be done after you run. The run immediately ends your activation. It can be done after a charge though, which is important. Most spellcasting units will have their spell be a special attack or action, and once that spell defines itself as a special attack or action, it gains all of those rules. So you cast a spell, which can be done at any time in your activation, and then it defines itself as a special attack or action, which we know counts as your combat action. Therefore, you cannot make a basic attack with this model, even though casting a spell doesn't inherently do that to you. Whereas, if you are a warcaster, notice that none of your spells are special attacks or actions. They're just a spell, and so do genuinely act as a bonus action they can make. This is of course model dependent. These Seeker Wardens, for example, could charge, fight in melee, and then using their Battle Wizard ability, if their attack got a kill, still cast a spell. Whereas this warcaster could charge, cast a spell, then attack, because the spell is just a free action to be done anytime and doesn't ever convert itself to a special attack or special action. Okay, now that we clearly understand what a special attack, action and spell is, let's get back to that push interaction. You can be pushed, slammed and thrown. These are all power attacks because you're using your raw strength, size and power to do them. And if you hit another object, that's called collateral damage. Power attacks that don't say they use the power of the weapon or spell causing it get their power from base size. If the attacking model's base is equal or smaller than the target's, then the power of your attack is 12, but if your base is larger, then it's power 14. Done. Let's start with a basic push. This is a simple move the target model directly away from your model, however far the push says. In the above example, that was d6 inches, right? But it might also be something like move the target the power of the model away. I mean, that'd be 14 inches, that's obviously too much. But it could be anything. It's defined in the ability. If the target model hits any other units, obstacles, etc., then it stops. No other damage is possible here, and the model is fine. However, if you push them into something like burning ground or a poison cloud, they take that effect now. Then we get a slam, as we saw in the above example. Move the targeted model directly away from your model, however far it should be moved, which will be stated in the spell or attack. The model is then knocked down. Then the model suffers a damage roll based on the weapon or ability doing the slam attack. If the model collided with another model of equal or greater base size, or any sort of obstacle that would stop it from moving, you roll an additional die of damage for this attack. If your base is larger than a model you get slammed into, then you keep on going through it and place your model depending on the rule of least disturbance. And if the slam model hit another model, whether friendly or foe, if that model is an equal or smaller sized base, it takes collateral damage and is knocked down. This damage roll is also based on the power of the original attack, but note it can't be boosted. Finally, we can throw a model. This can be from a spell or an attack, and how far it moves will be based on that spell or attack. The thrown model goes straight through smaller base models with no effect, but still stops if it collides with any form of obstacles or an equal or larger base model. The thrown model gets knocked down and then counts as contacting all models it overlaps with. It then takes its damage roll with an additional die if it hit or now overlaps any obstacle or equal or larger size base. And any model it is now overlapping takes a collateral damage roll, except for larger base models, who are fine. All moving attacks count as one of these. Again, consider these advanced rules. You can easily play your first 20 games and never do any of these attacks, okay? But now you know. Now we know enough to discuss the symbols on the Warjack data card. Slam, headbutt, throw, and trample. Good news, we've just covered slam and throw. This leaves us with headbutt and trample. Trample is nice and easy, okay? Move your Warjack in a straight line, its movement plus 3 inches. You can move over all small base models, but you must have room to place your own model after that move. Every model whose base you just moved over takes a melee attack roll based on your Warjack's power. Note, it's an attack roll, so you still need to hit before you roll the damage. Done. Now what's a headbutt? Make an attack roll. If you hit, the enemy is knocked down and then suffers a damage roll. You can't target models with a larger base than yours. Simple. Or is it? Well, so far, this is our first instance of not using a weapon, so where are we getting the power for this damage roll? Power attacks and collateral damage rolls work on base size. These are the extra abilities that most Warjacks have access to. Let's look at basic attacks and initial attacks. This is a timing thing, but important to know so you understand the importance of charging, etc. So, as we know, charging is strong because it's one of the few ways to give your regular plebs a boost dice. In the basics, I covered very briefly how the attack rolls work, but let's discuss timings and specifics. We now know what a special attack is. So what's a basic attack? It's an attack straight off the profile that doesn't become a special attack or action and isn't a power attack. It can be melee or ranged. We need to know this because some rules interact with basic attacks only. We mostly see this when we charge. If you have two weapons, you get to attack with both of them in melee. But that's only if your first attack is a basic attack. If you use a special attack, you forfeit any other attacks. When you charge, only the first attack you make from all of your weapons gets boosted. And note that when you charge, it's only the damage roll on your first attack that gets boosted, not the attack roll. We could call it the to hit roll, but it's not. It's an attack roll and a damage roll. Damage gets boosted, not attack. Think of running headlong at an enemy, right? It makes you hit harder, not more accurately. It makes sense. Ranged versus melee. Most models, if they melee, cannot then shoot. The advantage that specifically allows you to shoot in the same activation as a melee attack is called dual attack, and basically all warjacks have this symbol. Only relatively special regular humans have this, okay? Quick note on shooting: unlike with melee, even if you have a way to buy more attacks like warjacks and warcasters, you can still only shoot your gun as many times as the ROF of the gun allows. You cannot buy more shots, unless the gun has the reload advantage that lets you spend focus to shoot more. That one focus will buy you one shot of the gun, regardless of its rate of fire. While we're talking range, you can always shoot into combat, but it will increase the def of the enemy by 4. So a def 10 model becomes a def 14 model. And if the shooter is in melee, they have to shoot the enemy they're engaged with, unless they have certain advantages that break these rules, of course. And that does exist. Now you know the basics of the advanced. Let's have a quick note on Warbeasts and Warlocks. Warcasters are the industrial side of the Iron Kingdoms, and they fight alongside their mechanical automata. Warlocks are the wild side of the Iron Kingdoms, and they fight alongside their enraged and enslaved hulks. We already know how Warcasters and focus work. Every turn you generate your full focus and hand them out as you see fit to warjacks in your control range. Then you can spend focus to cast spells and buy extra attacks. That goes for the warjacks too. A simple generate, spend, generate mechanic. Warlocks use fury instead of focus. They don't generate fury naturally, they have to draw it off their warbeasts. And the warbeasts generate fury every time they charge or attack. Focus is spending, fury is generating. Let's get to specifics. If you are a warlock, you start the game with your full arc allowance. This is the most fury you can have at any time, and you can never exceed it via a general rule like leeching, which we'll talk about in a moment. In your control phase, the way you generate fury is by leeching it off your warbeasts. You can only leech up to your arc stat. Your warbeast needs to be in your control range to leech off it. You can also leech 1 fury for each health point you want to give up to do so. You know, like you're cutting yourself for like power. Standard, we've all been there. After leeching as much as you can or want from your living warbeast, you can choose to gain 1 fury for every warbeast from your cohort that has died. If your warbeast dies, you can immediately leech all of its fury onto your warlock. Again, no going over your arc stat, but you won't lose this fury. During your own activation, you can choose to remove any amount of fury. Apart from generation and management, fury is the same as focus with what it can allow your models to do: extra attacks, cast spells, boost attack and damage rolls. As a warlock, just like a warcaster, you can spend 1 fury to heal for 1 point as many times as you want. However, where a warcaster can spend 1 focus to ignore 5 damage, a warlock cannot. Instead, a warlock can transfer damage instead of negate. You can spend 1 fury to transfer all damage from an attack onto one of your warbeasts, as long as that warbeast isn't at max fury. And that's warlocks. Very similar to warcasters, the only difference being in how you gain your fury. So let's talk warbeasts, who are identical to warjacks in all ways, except for how they generate fury. A warbeast starts with 0 fury, and they will have a fury stat which is the maximum number of fury that warbeast can have. Normally 3, 4, 5, something like that. Anytime you want to make an additional attack, run, charge, boost a roll, you gain 1 fury. You can also, if you want, rile the warbeast, which means generate as many fury points as you want without doing anything. You just get to give them max fury or whatever. Also, warbeasts don't have spells, they have animi, which are spells that when cast, instead of spending focus, you gain fury on that warbeast. Easy. So you're seeing how this works now. The warbeasts generate fury by attacking the enemy, and then the warlock leeches fury off them so he can cast spells and do his own thing. Warbeasts generate, warlocks leech and then spend. If your warbeasts don't generate fury, the warlock can't do their big cool spells and attacks. Which brings us to the final thing. Frenzy. In your control phase, after your Warlock has leached Fury, if any Warbeasts have any Fury remaining, you need to make a threshold check. Roll 2d6 and add 1 for each Fury left on the model. If the roll is higher than the Warbeast's threshold stat, it fails and frenzies. If you fail and frenzy, the Warbeast immediately activates, shakes any effects on it like knockdown. It charges the closest model, whether friend or foe, and then makes one attack with its highest power weapon. The attack roll is boosted and the damage roll is boosted. Big. You don't make any additional attacks, just the one. After this one attack, you remove all frenzy from the Warbeast. This is its activation for the turn. You cannot activate it again this turn. This is a really interesting mechanic of generating, leeching, spending, and it's a bit more complex than managing focus, but it's very strong. Alright, let's cover a few smaller things that might come up in your first few games, okay? Really simple one here, cohort versus battle group. You will often see something saying this affects your battle group, or this affects cohort models, or some such. Battle group is your warcaster and all warjacks under his control. Cohort is just the warjacks under his control, but not the warcaster himself, or herself. Removing a model. So technically there are 3 states of death for a model: disabled, boxed, and destroyed. This will very rarely matter, but technically a model is first disabled, then if it isn't immediately healed, it is boxed. And if nothing happens to stop it from being boxed, it is then destroyed, at which point it is removed from play. This is just a timing thing, right? This is so that special rules can interact when they should. For example, a very common advantage is tough. When you are disabled, you roll a 5+ on 1 dice, and if you make it, you regain 1 hit point. This is done so that tough can happen and not interrupt any deeper effects that happen when you're boxed. And then the boxed abilities can happen at that point so that we all know if you're saved from being boxed, then you don't technically die and generate a soul or a corpse. This is purely a timing terminology thing. Almost always, you will not care if a model is disabled, boxed versus destroyed, right? Finally, we're going to talk about unit movement. From the basics video, we know the core of this. Move any model and then place every model within 2 inches of that model. Unit movement only applies to normal movement, not when models within the unit are moved for any other reason. Re-listen to that line. Let's look at a few interesting interactions here. The most common issue you will find here is what happens in combat when it's the turn after you charged. One of your models gets a kill and is left out of melee range, but the rest of the unit is still in range. You need to move. And what if this one model moves over 3 inches? Does that count as him charging again despite the others not moving? The rules for disengaging are easy. You can make a normal move, but you give up your combat action to do so. Firstly, if a unit charges and the lead charger goes into melee with a single model or a unit, the rest of your unit needs to also attack the same model or unit that the original charger has in its engagement range if you want to get the boosted damage roll. For example, here we charge the unit, but thanks to being placed within 2 inches of our charger, we have this warjack in range of one of our placed models. We can attack that warjack, but it won't count as a charge, so no boosted damage. If there is any effect on one of your models that would stop it from moving, it can still be placed within 2 inches of the other model, but it forfeits its combat action. One model is out of range, but the rest of your models are in range. It's your activation. The rules are simple. You can perform your move action however you need to stay within the engagement range of the unit you are already in engagement range of. It doesn't count as a charge no matter how far your model actually gets moved, so no boost dice. There you go. Easy. Another little unit movement shenanigan, because it will come up. What happens when you are forced out of unit coherency? Maybe one of your models gets thrown, or if you have an ability like reposition. Simply put, nothing. There you go. That was easy. Remember, okay, unit coherency only counts for your normal move action. Here's an example. My Dreadguard Cavalry have a 3-inch reposition. At the end of a model or unit's activation in which it did not run or fail a charge, it can advance 3 inches. Here they are, all placed in unit coherency 2 inches apart. End of the activation. They all reposition as far away from each other as possible. This model is 8 inches away from the rest of the unit. This is fine. Skip forward to their next movement phase. Same rules still apply. Pick any model to move and the rest get placed within 2 inches. These models could be hiding safely behind a building and then teleport 24 inches up the board. I'm not saying it's a good move, I'm just saying, like, it's possible. And that is everything you need to know in your advanced training. Over these 3 videos, you've seen the rules in action, how they work, and why they work. These are the core rules of Warmachine thoroughly explored, and now all you need to do is go ahead and play the game. It really won't take you more than a few games, a few rewatches of this video series, and you'll have the core sorted out. If you like what you see here, remember to share it with your friends or others who are Warmachine curious. Thanks for watching. Bye.